All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this, our October webinar. I can't believe it's already October. This year has really flown. But I've really been looking forward to this one. And today we'll be talking about a new resource that has been in the works for quite a while now, with a lot of great partnerships all coming together to shrink the technology universe. What we mean by that, of course, is that there's been a proliferation, which is super exciting, of technologies to help decarbonize our buildings. But what's real? Where to start? And when we've got such momentum and pressure to move quickly, how do we make sure we're making good decisions? And putting our money to work most productively. My name is Dave Hodgins. I'm a founder of Sustento Group, and I run the LA Better Buildings Challenge, where it is part of my job to have awesome conversations like we'll be having today. As always, I want to thank our funder, the LA Department of Water and Power. We've been doing this work for over a decade now, and it's really a privilege to have the opportunity to do that, to keep experimenting at this edge and working with partners like we'll be chatting with today. And thank you, DWP, for your support. I also want to thank all of the organizations listed here for your help in promoting the webinar and all of the work that we do. And it's definitely reciprocal. We're super excited about all the work that each of you are doing, and really rowing all together is what makes this work. So thank you to all of you. A couple of housekeeping items before I roll through some introductory slides. What is the technology directory? What is this idea of shrinking the technology universe? We're going to keep lines muted as usual, keep things orderly, but there will be time for questions. And today is going to be as much conversation as possible. I'm going to try to go quickly through the what is it and get to the questions. We will, as always, send the slides and a recording along with links to the resources that we're going to talk about as we go by Friday. And we appreciate your feedback as always. So please do tell us how we did. Tell your friends, join us for future webinars. And of course, check out the directory. So agenda pretty straightforward, the universe of technology. About the directory, what is our thesis here? Why did we build this thing? And then getting to our speakers and a conversation about, what are we looking at? What's hot? How do we think about selecting pilot sites? How do we scale to portfolio-wide deployment? And then some questions. Time for questions from you all. So a universe of technology. So there's so much in the news, and if you're in an echo chamber, anything like mine, there's constant headlines about, glimmers of hope and optimism, as well as sort of pessimistic, news as well. We're all doomed, right? We're running out of things. So carbon capture is a huge part of all of the IPCC models. Any of the 1.5C type scenarios include, a big piece about carbon capture. And then you also read about the dangers of carbon capture. It's a new technology. It's unproven. And so there's a risk, I think, that we lose momentum by thinking, wow, there's this great stuff happening. We're going to capture all the carbon, so we don't need to worry about emitting more, right? That's an excuse, I think. Really exciting to see places like this that are repurposing coal plants into clean energy plants. So does that mean, we're done? Coal is transitioning. It's all happening. It's exciting, but I don't think so. Then, kind of on the carbon capture thing, let's suck CO2 out of the air and use that to create electricity. I heard about a technology that Kevin may touch on that's using CO2 as a component, as a fuel for a heat pump. It's super exciting. And does this mean we've got it all figured out? I don't think so yet either. It's exciting news. And then you hear confusing things like the promise of hydrogen to decarbonize industry and transportation, all these difficult to decarbonize sectors. And then you've got very credible, scientists saying, if it leaks, it's actually worse than methane, which is true. So all of these things we have to take with a little bit of a grain of salt. We can't hang our hat on it. And then last but not least, my favorite, as we see California and now New York, saying no more ICE, no more internal combustion engines. We're going all electric, and we've got our utilities trying to keep up with that, demand, and it's exciting. Then we read about, Elon Musk saying, oh, you own a lithium mine, that's like printing money, right? And, it is true. There are a lot of social issues and environmental issues that go along with mining, and, as with fossil fuels. So what to make of all of this? Well, I say the sign is pretty clear. We have the technology, we have the capital, we have the expertise, right? So it's time. We don't need to be waiting for a magic bullet, the next nuclear fission technology to make a huge dent that's going to make all of these future investments more cost effective. And that doesn't mean we don't pursue all of those things, but it's not an excuse to wait. So that being said, there are a ton of options out there, and we work with a lot of buildings in our role, some of the most sophisticated all the way down to those who are really struggling just to comply with local ordinances. So we touch a lot of buildings, and I think it's a common theme that everybody is very busy. Everybody is getting hit up, constantly bombarded by sales calls and pitches and opportunities. And thankfully, there are groups like those who we're partnering with, who you'll hear from in a minute, that are helping to shrink the so-called universe of technologies that can feel so vast, right? So where do I start? Enter the building technology directory. So we are not inventing anything here. We are very much standing on the shoulders of giants who are doing a ton of the heavy lifting and leveraging the collective expertise of our partners, and packaging all of this information in a way that makes this easier. And that's what I mean by shrinking the universe. And I'll get into more of this, but that's a screenshot, and you can see this on our website. There's a link there that I think Megan will drop in the chat here in a second, where you can see this sortable, searchable, simple starting point for you to start choosing some technologies that could make sense in your buildings. As I said, we've got great partners involved. We're inventing nothing here except leveraging what we know about how to try to make things a little easier for folks who are very busy, who are trying to do the right thing, and need a place to go where it's a safe space, where they can make decisions, get some support that is going to help move the needle. So we'll hear from three of our partners listed here today. I'd like to give a shout out to AEA, the Association for Energy Affordability. They're our partners on the multifamily affordable side of all this, which is a real pillar of our work, and I think very important to everyone on the webinar today, and growing that segment of the directory, as well as the expertise of our partners within the LA Better Buildings Challenge. So similar to Fifth Wall and USGBC, we've got a lot of overlapping members, partners, LPs, we call them different names. But these are the real estate companies who are going to market and deploying these technologies into their buildings and testing them each day. And so that was a big source for the water tech that you'll see included in the directory, as well as others. One of the main things that I think is different about our directory relative to others, there are others out there, is that it's easily searchable. Our whole thing, again, here is not to reinvent the wheel, but to make it easy, right? To make it easy to quickly find what you're looking for. So it's easily searchable. If one of our pipeline partners is particularly, compelling, you feel like they're looking at the world the same way you are, for example, then you can look at just the technologies that came through them. If you're looking for HVAC, generation, storage, it's sortable so that you can quickly get to what it is that you're looking for, water, as I mentioned. And I think this slide has a little animation to show you what one of the profiles actually looks like. So this is a company called Turntide that happens to have a double check mark by their name through both GSA and Fifth Wall. Very cool company that makes frictionless electric motors. Another thing that I think is different about our directory relative to some others is that it's got all the information you need in there to get in touch, and make an informed, hopefully an excited, right, outreach to the company. And so this is supposed to be, self-service, very self-contained, and each profile is consistent. So as you look at the different companies, you'll see the same information presented, the same way, along with a short video, and everything that we think will be helpful to get you on the right path. Some of you may remember that we, pre-COVID, had been doing a really fun event. I mean, we did it for almost a decade, our Building Technology Showcase. And, that event was always all about projects and matchmaking, and it achieved that. But COVID, forced us all to rethink, how are we reaching people? What is the best way to really accomplish our mission? And so we have decided to trim back on as much of the in-person events, work really with partners that are doing a great job of that. And we've created this evergreen resource that will leverage some of the content that we've developed over the almost 10 years we've been doing this, plus this current round of collaboration with the partners that we're going to hear from here shortly. The LABBC is also here as a resource to support development of pilots, right? That is the work. So we have technical advisors on staff to support pilot project selection here within LADWP services area. To provide that technical assistance, we work directly with the utilities, get them involved at the appropriate point. On the rebates, we can support on financing if that's an interest. We have a lot of those relationships. And then, of course, we do our annual innovation awards, and we're choosing or looking for candidates now, actually heading into the end of the year, to do some awards and recognition. And as part of this, we'll also be creating case studies on successful pilots. And here's a couple of examples that have come out of this that are pretty exciting. The first was with City National Plaza, window film, huge savings, and a 1-year payback on that after incentives. So any building that hasn't looked at window film recently, the technology has advanced dramatically. The rebates are great. And you can also get, a nice aesthetic upgrade. And then on the water side, and I should mention this, specifically at City Hall East, this was a technology dynamic water that came through the GSA Green Proving Ground, which we'll hear about, saving 20%, over 1 million gallons a year at City Hall East. Huge reduction in sewer charges, also got rid of chemicals, which was big for them from a workplace safety perspective and helps with lead. But right now, because of the severity of the water situation, the drought ongoing, DWP has tripled the incentive for cooling tower upgrades. So, as well as any water saving measures, including irrigation and indoor efficiency. So if you haven't looked at water lately, or if you have recently and it didn't quite pencil, let's look again, because the ROIs are fantastic with the incentives that DWP is offering. So great time to be looking at water. And before we get into the meat of it, yeah, I just wanted to really acknowledge and thank all of the companies that have participated in our initial RFI process. You know, we piggybacked on the processes that they already went through with each of our channel partners, but they worked with us to create these consistent profiles that we hope are going to make this a really actionable, useful resource, excuse me, for all of you. So with that, I'd like to get into some speaker introductions. And everyone can start turning on their cameras. So Kevin, good to see you, my friend. Kevin is, and all of our panelists will introduce themselves, but Kevin heads up the Green Proving Ground at GSA and has been a long time collaborator and friend, and it's great to have you back, Kevin. Jennifer Place is a new friend. Jennifer's a principal at Fifth Wall, and she'll say more about who they are, but very excited to have them involved. And some of our prep conversations for this have got us headed towards kind of an exciting collaboration that we'll get into. And Pars Parikh is with USGBC-LA, and he's graciously standing in for my good friend Ben, who heads up USGBC, who is not able to be here today. So thank you all for joining us. And I think, Kevin, each of you have a couple slides. So my first question for each of you, starting with Kevin, is to, please introduce yourself and your work in this space. Then we'll dive in.
Okay, great. Well, my name is Kevin Powell, and thank you, Dave, for that excellent intro. Dave and I have gone back a long time. And I will say, just sort of out of the gate, that this project, this sort of compendium of technologies, this technology directory, this is something that I can certainly say that I've hoped to have for a decade. And as Dave said, there's some other examples out there. None of them actually realized the way this one is. So again, really hoping that this can move the needle. But in short, I lead the emerging technologies practice at GSA. For those of you who don't know GSA, we're the federal government's landlord. We have the largest single portfolio of commercial real estate in the country, about 380 million square feet. 1.1 million people work in our office space. So again, there's a lot of space. And then because we are the federal government, we are, of course, guided by the goals and objectives of that government. And this particular administration, the Biden-Harris administration, has really set out truly ambitious, I think, some would call them big, hairy, audacious goals, if you've read that book. But generally speaking, what we're talking about is getting to a net zero building portfolio by 2045. We're talking about having 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2030 and 100% zero emission vehicles in the federal fleet, 450,000 vehicles by 2035. So these are really, I think, they're very, very ambitious goals. But also, as Dave said at the outset, I think we can be optimistic. And what we're really hoping is that by setting out these goals, we can A, move the market, and B, really deploy all of the innovative technologies that we already have that can actually deliver on these goals. So that's what I got. Oh, I don't know. Do you want me to go through the rest of the slides at this point, or are we moving to other people?
Yeah, why don't you run through them quickly, Kevin, and we'll be sending them around too. I think they're pretty detailed, but yeah, a couple takeaways on each would be great.
Yeah, so let me just quickly dive, go through these, because I think we're going to cover a lot of this in some Q&A following, or at least I hope so. But just to sort of give you a little bit of a better picture of how emerging building technologies is organized at GSA. I lead what's called the Center for Emerging Building Technologies. There's 3 programs in it. You can see that at the far right is a pilot to portfolio program. That's really looking at well, let me actually start at the left and say what we really need to know is there's a lot of tech out there. There's a lot of innovative tech out there. We are 100% clear that the technologies of yesterday are not going to get us to where we need to be tomorrow. The question is, which of those innovative technologies really work in the real world? How can we invest limited resources in buildings that have to work on an everyday basis for their tenants? We're in the business providing space to our tenants first and foremost. So what are those technologies that work best? That's what this program is really. It's the bedrock of the program. That's this green proving ground. And that is where in this directory, when you're looking at those studies, those are the outcomes of that program. So every year we have a process and it's currently open, a request for information. We can go out to industry. We have some topic areas. I encourage all of you to take a look, gsa.gov/GPG. You'll find all the information you need. In any event, that's the intake part. The other sort of, well, actually, let me say another thing about that, which is that we are not in the business of doing actually pilots or case studies. What we're really in the business of doing is a certain kind of alchemy, or at least what I would call alchemy, of going from a few testbed locations to a broad set of recommendations that you can have confidence in that this deployment recommendation is going to apply to a great set of buildings, not just one place. That pilot to portfolio at the other end of the spectrum is really looking, though, to drive confidence that these are in fact not pilots, that these are applicable results that you can broadly deploy, that we can broadly deploy at our agency. There's a few more thoughts I could have on what makes that work for us. It might work for you. And in the middle is something we've just launched. And the idea of the Applied Innovation Learning Lab is that we're going to focus, we're going to have sort of a cluster of technologies, a sort of a real sort of synergy between them, so that people can see in one sort of a one-stop shop of actually seeing and kicking tires of these new technologies. And then also that these technologies can kind of interact with each other. Our focus currently is actually for these Applied Innovation Learning Labs is on electric vehicles. How do we move the fueling source from offsite, a gas station, to on-site where vehicles are charging overnight? Next slide. This, again, just touching on this super briefly, we know how to get to net zero facility operations. It's been shown, it's been demonstrated, and I think all sorts of smart people will tell you that we can do this on almost any building. This is essentially what we see as the stack that delivers that. We can, again, come back to some of these. And I did just want to include this slide in the deck so that you can have it as a takeaway. Next one. This is another, just a key concept. Hopefully, again, it's scary, the valley of death. But the point of this slide is that there's a broad saying that nobody ever got fired for specifying IBM, and what people mean by that is that the tried and the true is always a sound investment choice in a certain way. If you're not looking to take on any risk, what we're saying is that, and what we all know, is that we need programs such as the GPG. And really, we have peers over there at Department of Defense, which is ESTCP. We have a pipeline of technologies that are, the research and development has been funded by DOE, but DOE also funds some of these field validation studies as well. They're our partner in GPG. And then we also have utility programs. All of us, all four of these groups, what we're all looking to do is to essentially bridge that valley of death by taking on that first user risk, showing that these technologies can deliver in the real world, and giving those that would then procure them the confidence that in fact this is not unproven, this is not, it's de-risking essentially. Next slide. I really do like the topic, the name of this thing, Aspiration into Action. And if you think about a program like ours that seems very aspirational, but in the end, how is it that we managed to survive for the past, at this point, 11 years? We made it through, 3 different administrations. What is it about it? Well, we deliver real savings, and that's, of course, it's everybody's bottom line. Now, I would like to say there's a triple bottom line, that this is good for people, it's good for the planet, it's good for profit, your bottom line. We don't really take profit, but we do, but savings do translate to other things we can do. And so what you can see from this slide, though, just most importantly, is that this is not a bunch of research reports that sit on a shelf. These are research. This is research that leads to action, that is to say, to deployment, and that deployment, at this point, we're in about, I think, about close to 500 different locations have taken on at least one of our technologies, and that's delivering like $16 million of savings a year and 58,000 tons of CO2 reduction. So again, real world results from doing these kinds of studies. And then I think the next slide is the last one. This one, I want to promote our RFI. I think that made it into the chat as well. But again, the whole point of this is that if there's a tech out there that you think would benefit from field validation, you would feel better about it if you knew that somebody had tried it out, had some national lab folks verify that it really delivers, develop some specs that tell you how you can procure it. You want to refer that company to our program and have us consider them. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. That was great. And I want to come back to the point about specs and how the work that you're doing is helping to drive the market in that way. So Jennifer, I think you just have one slide, so I'll let you introduce yourself, and we'll go around to Pars. No, I'm kidding, Kevin. That was great, and a lot of questions, follow-up questions from that. So Jennifer.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, David, and thank you to the LABCC here for the opportunity to participate in this directory. It's a really exciting new initiative that FIFWAL is proud to be a part of. So just to tell you a little bit about FIFWAL overall, we are the largest and most active investor in real estate technology, or PropTech. We invest in early stage technologies that are looking to digitize and decarbonize the built environment. So we were first founded roughly 6 years ago, when we collectively realized that the real estate industry, despite being one of the largest asset classes out there, was very fragmented, very challenging really for startups to engage with, and therefore was lagging really in its ability to adopt technology and innovation. And we sought to address that, but by raising capital directly from the largest real estate asset owner operators, which today include a group of over 100 strategic LPs, span 15 different countries, which really help us drive insights into the pressing, let's call it, needs and priorities for the real estate space. And then for us on the investment side, we can go and canvas the landscape of opportunities and identify novel groundbreaking technology that can either help, again, digitize or decarbonize the built environment. So I'll pause there. That's a quick one.
And could you say a little bit more about the B Corp piece? I think that's super interesting, for a VC company to be a B Corp. If you could just a minute about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, climate and sustainability is core to everything that we do within FIFWAL. So as part of that, we've been certified B Corp. Within our own investment priorities, we are investing and holding really companies accountable to what we call the built world carbon impact value, which is an assessment where for every single technology in our portfolio, we estimate the total impact of CO2 equivalent that you can remove by deploying that technology. And likewise, we really, and I would encourage you to look at our website, put out report annually, just talking about the impact of our technologies in our LP base and their assets, as well as really encouraging the founders within our portfolio to also raise capital from VCs that are underrepresented, LGBTQ, and other kind of minority type backers as well. So all of that is just part of us really looking to do better for our world and the planet.
Super cool. You anticipated one of my other follow-up questions there with how you're tracking things through and projecting. Thank you, Jennifer. Great. And Pars, last but not least, with the USGBC-LA.
Yeah, hi everyone, good afternoon. So my name is Pars. I'm the Sustainability Program Coordinator here. I want to begin by just thanking Dave, LA Better Buildings Challenge, GSA Fifth Wall, the sponsors, LAWP, people for putting this together. As some of you guys have probably put together, the momentum in this space is exciting. It's kind of just off the charts. The frequency of what's going on is incredible. So thank you for allowing us to contribute to this. So at USGBC-LA, we're a member-driven organization. Our mission is to leverage the built environment as an entry point to transform Southern California into a more sustainable region for all. If you go to the next slide. So here's a kind of like an overview, and you can always go to the website netzeroaccelerator.org to learn a little bit more. If you go one more slide as well. Here are some of the companies from this cohort. So we are a team, and some of you are probably accustomed to seeing Ben, who is our executive director, or Colin, who's a director. Basically, our mission is to just leverage the built environment, right? And we're a member-driven organization, so we have people from the real estate portfolio space to even from the city side to the advisory side, and we want to put that all together and help these companies, whether they be like in energy efficiency, water efficiency, advanced materials, or even some of the other spaces, such as waste reduction. So the goal is really just to reduce the impact of the built environment. And Kevin and Dave shared some powerful stats. So I think they kind of do a good job summarizing, the impact that can happen in this area, especially the pollution that's already been created and what we can do to mitigate that.
Great, thank you. So with that context, we'll shift to what I've been looking forward to. The whole point is the discussion, and before I do that, just want to note that Fifth Wall's focus, USGBC's focus, is broader than just our slightly myopic, maybe some might call me obsessive focus on existing buildings and energy and water reduction. So our directory is not looking at materials per se or waste. So there is more. I'd encourage you, if those are, and that's all part of the big S, sustainability. If that's what you're focused on right now, absolutely, check out the rest of what they're offering. So what we're doing is laser focused on the mission of energy and water in existing buildings, kind of lifting the veil a little bit. Kevin, maybe you could talk about, some of the other government rules you got to kind of live by in terms of naming names and so forth, and then providing a little, boots on the ground to support deployment of all these technologies here locally. So with that, I think I'll skip the first question, which is, what do you see as the role of technology, and skip, because we had a good question from the audience, and I think this will also help everyone understand as we get into this, where to direct further questions to you guys. But maybe starting with Kevin, and then we'll go down the list. What stage of technology are you interested in for your purposes?
Yeah, that's a great one, and it's in its own way, it's an art. So what we're looking at is emerging building technologies. And so what exactly is an emerging building technology? Well, typically what that means for us is that it's ready to be installed in a operating building. So it's a building that's occupied by tenants. So it has to really work. It has to be able to be operated by the people who operate our buildings, and has to be able to be installed by the people who install technologies for us. So that means that you have, at the very minimum, all required certifications, if you need UL certifications or ANSI or anything else, and that you also have the ability to produce this in some kind of commercial way. That is to say, you have at least a limited production line that can really crank out some product. We're certainly looking at the end of one of these evaluations to be able to scale. So we want to see that you have a pathway to really full scale production in a really short time frame after finishing an evaluation. So in kind of technical terms, we call that technology readiness level 8, which is right before technology readiness level 9, 9 being full commercialization. You're really out there in the marketplace. And another way to look at this, because there are some technologies that have been around that haven't really seen uptake, and we sort of look at those sometimes too, because they need a field validation even though they've been around for a little while. Generally speaking, the overall definition for emerging building technology, or actually emerging technologies of all sorts, is that they have less than 16% market share. Although I would say most of what we're looking at probably has less than 1%, since it hasn't really been around very long.
I think it's a really interesting slice, and I, having been part of a couple of your down selects, it's a high bar, right, to get deployed, and we've got cybersecurity and insurance requirements and everything. There's a little bit buried, and like you said, you can actually install it. The can part, is a lot there. So I think that's a really helpful, and this whole space of emerging technology, like what do we really mean? So that's why I'm kind of teasing that out a little bit. Jennifer, how do you guys look at this? What is the profile? Yeah. How would you characterize?
Absolutely. So within fifth wall, I think we have the opportunity to back technologies as early, and putting this in venture terms, as seed stage technologies, all the way through pre-IPO. So kind of bringing it back to the scale that Kevin was referring to with the TRL, technology readiness level. We're not, we're kind of past the level where you're trying to identify core analytical experiments or, basic principles in lab, and there's already very clear validation from the technology standpoint, but we will completely take commercialization risk, where you're looking at a technology that's already been proven, validated in lab, but you're still scaling up manufacturing. You're still trying to bring the cost and really validate the ROI of that technology as the company continues to mature. So we very much are playing in the middle of that valley of death that we were talking about earlier. You can think of us as a little oasis in that valley of death, so to speak. But we will certainly, kind of take that leap of faith and back earlier stage opportunities. I think what is really compelling about fifth wall, though, is the ability to also drive adoption on the back end for those technologies that are already more mature through our corporate partner and LP network. Since we are able to work with them closely to validate and prove out that technology, but then on the back end can continue to drive the scale of that as well.
Mm-hmm. I definitely want to come back to that. Thank you. And Pars, how would you describe the stage TRL, to use the acronym, of the technologies that are within the USGBC platform?
Yeah, this is a good point of differentiation. At the NZA, I guess another thing I should emphasize, unlike fifth wall, for example, we aren't necessarily investing in the companies themselves, but we look at companies, generally speaking, companies that are a little bit more, they might not have UL certification, for example. One size doesn't fit all. So I think if you have a technology out there that you think is compelling, it offers a solution that maybe there's not that many alternatives to that problem that it's solving, we would welcome you to apply. Generally, the people in our community, they prefer to have a technology or service that's already been piloted once, preferably in the SoCal marketplace. And the idea behind that is not just like, I know in startups, they say it's nice to be second so you can learn. We're not necessarily looking at it like that, so you could, that angle, but we're looking more at the backbone of things, right? Where, for example, consider two of the companies in the water space. Leapfrog Design has a water reuse system. Aquaport Technologies, they develop permeable concrete so water can percolate down. In both of those situations, our partners want to know what was the permitting process, right, to implement this technology. And if they can see it was done once already in Southern California or in city of Los Angeles and so forth, the capacity to replicate it just became a lot more straightforward. And then, another takeaway from that as well is the supply chain behind it. And, we do have two of the largest ports out here, which gives us unique access, but at the same time, there's a lot of challenges that come within that. So even if it's manufactured locally, a lot of these technologies have international supply chains. So our partners like to see, what was the process? What was the lead time? If they put the order in now, when can they implement the sustainable solution? And that gives them insight from seeing it like played out.
Yeah. Yep. So thank you. So I think, and this was part of our intention, with the collaborations that, I'm so excited about, is these different foci, right? Different stages of TRL. And so we've got, the more local, maybe, pre-commercial, where you've got, some local universities, and you guys have worked a lot with local universities that see themselves, right, as demonstration laboratories, right? And they don't have some of the same sensitivities or issues to manage that a Fifth Wall LP or Kevin, and GSA and very, sensitive facilities might have. And so we need it all. And that's part of our intention with this directory is, so if you view yourself as a lab, you can look at the USGBC stuff. If you look at yourself as, a Fifth Wall type of profile, or if you're in a more organization that feels a little bit more like Kevin's, right? We've got different flavors. Another question that I had already noted that someone has already asked in the chat is more about the vetting process, and how is that structured? Kevin, you've touched on this a little bit, but could you talk about that? And I'll just go down the list again.
Yeah, well, so first of all, we are the government. And so what that means is that we're really committed to an open and transparent process at both the front end and the back end. So that the front end being this sort of, I would say, the intake, this technology, how do we find that? So the process, I will say it might seem to some to be kind of complicated and lengthy. We try to do it as quickly as we can. It does take about 9 months from start to finish, just to be clear, for those who might be considering submitting. So from the moment we open that RFI in the beginning of October to the time we have an announced program, which is typically the end of April, that's kind of the time frame. So what happens in that time frame? The first is, I did see a question here, like, is there a rubric? And in fact, if you look at the RFI, you'll see the rubric. It's a pretty clear rubric. And what happens to all of the folks there's a set of questions, there's a set of ways that those questions are going to be evaluated. The people doing the evaluation, every submission gets 3 subject matter experts. Mostly drawn from the national labs, but actually also drawn from folks like LABBC, from USGBC, potentially from Fifth Wall. I mean, all sorts of people, academics and so on. So people who really understand the technology score the technology. You've got 3 scores, and from that set of scores, we need to create some semifinalists, and that's what we do. So we shortlist typically about somewhere between a quarter to a third of submissions end up being semifinalists. Semifinalists present to a technical committee that consists of GSA and Department of Energy partners. We hear all those submissions, and I will say that it's usually an embarrassment of riches, honestly. That kind of thing that most universities will say when they reject folks, like, you were really great. Sorry, we didn't admit you. I always feel like that, to be honest. I think if you make the cut to semifinalist, you're really, really a good company. There's only so much money, though, and there's only so much staff capacity we have. So we have to select a manageable program. We then select that manageable program. And I should say at the very outset, this starts with identification of a topic area. So there's some need that we have that we're really looking to the marketplace to solve. In this case, like right now, we're talking about net zero buildings. There's some sub categories to that that are pretty specific. And so then at the end, and I think there was another question about this, but just, how does this go after that? So once you have that set of technologies that have been selected, we work with the vendor as well as our national lab partners to come up with what does success look like? Like, how do we know that this is going to work? Or, what does it look like to work? What's the use case and how do we evaluate that use case? And then, what sorts of buildings does this make sense for? So then we go from our portfolio. And like I said, it's a very large portfolio, which is why we can run this program the way we do. But when you do have 9,000 buildings to choose from, that's a lot of buildings to choose from. So we try to find, the minimum number is what we like to say, the minimum number that's going to give us a generalizable result that we can have confidence in. We go out, we install, we have the lab sort of validate. At the end of the day, we write up some findings. We publish those findings so that everybody can share. That's what's in fact on the directory. And then, of course, we have some additional stuff internally that we're using to help guide our own investment decisions.
Right.
Hopefully that explains it all.
It does, and I wanted to underline the part about how you're thinking about the application of the technologies within the set, the embarrassment of riches that kind of comes over the transom, and then balancing, what are these potential opportunities relative to the portfolio and the budget, and that balancing act. So you kind of jumped to the next question I was going to ask about, selecting pilot sites. And it sounds like in your case, it's somewhat related to what's come in through the RFI process, which was a question I was just asking about. So Jennifer, in terms of sourcing new technologies to invest in your case, and back as they go to market, could you talk a little bit more, you touched on it, but a little bit more about your process and the technical aspects of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to take a step back for a moment, we all have recognized here that real estate is obviously the largest asset class on earth and actually one of the largest environmental offenders. So really technology here is the single biggest lever that we can pull. I think one of the interesting things to note here that ties into kind of our selection process is that a lot of real estate firms are starting to recognize that climate exposure is actually business exposure. So when we talk about businesses or climate tech that can drive higher energy efficiency, that translates directly into lower operating expenses. If you have more efficient construction processes, that lowers construction costs, right? If you have more renewable energy sources, again, that lowers energy costs. So for us, it very directly comes back to, does this technology drive a more sustainable business outcome as well for the asset operators that are within our portfolio and ecosystem? So I think that is the number one priority for us when we source and evaluate new technologies in the space. I think in terms of our own deal flow, we have looked at over 2,000 different opportunities, review a couple hundred opportunities on a monthly basis, very much working and driving collaboration with the broader ecosystem, with accelerators, with founders, with fellow, investment funds as well, to really serve as kind of this very broad funnel for new opportunities and new technology within this space. In terms of the areas that we're focused on and how we try and kind of narrow the aperture of that, we're really focused on 4 different stages of climate tech within the built world. Firstly and foremost, and we really kind of ground this in the building life cycle. So you can kind of imagine all the materials going into building, focusing on pre-construction, you know, where really you can talk about more sustainable concrete. We can talk about smart glass. You can talk about, you know, decarbonizing building envelopes. So the materials piece is the first bucket of opportunities that we look at. Construction is the next one, where we've made a number of investments around prefab technology. Building operations is a massive, massive area of focus for us. And we take that all the way up the value chain, really moving, you know, obviously looking at energy efficiency, at HVAC, at refrigeration, but very importantly, also looking at clean energy, at waste, at water. And then the last piece is end of life. Obviously, thinking about when a building is in its last legs. So how can we look at technology to enable deconstruction, demolition, waste processing, recycling, upcycling? So all of those are really the points of focus for our fund.
Great. A couple hundred deals a month. You guys are busy.
There's a lot of very exciting technology. A lot of, I will say, founders are busy.
Yeah, right, for sure. And you know, we chatted about it in some of our prep, but I'm really excited about you and Kevin, you know, following up, because so much comes in through their RFI process that isn't necessarily quite at that, you know, TRL that he can move forward with, but could be a great fit for you guys. So I'm really excited. That's a win from my perspective that you guys are talking along those lines. And we are burning through this hour, looking ahead at some of the rest of the questions that we have. Well, someone asked about it, and we had it as a question here. So maybe in the final few minutes, the Inflation Reduction Act, sort of a veiled, not the greatest name, is for what is really the hugest investment in climate solutions ever, right? And a lot of this coming in the form of tax credits, and other incentives, which might, you know, drive interest amongst your, you know, LP base, and PARs amongst your members, our partners. We call them all different things. And then Kevin, for you guys, I think that means some more resources. So yeah, put it out, you know, to Kevin, and we'll go around the horn. But how does this impact the outlook for the next couple of years or foreseeable future?
Yeah, well, I think it really is. This is a pretty rapid infusion of money for us, for GSA. There's $3.4 billion that have been made available to GSA for really 3 specific things. The largest bucket, $2.2 billion, is for low carbon materials. And where, you know, again, we're still working on some of the definition of what is in that, what's in that bucket. But essentially, again, when you think about low carbon concrete, asphalt, flat glass, aluminum, those are the steel. Those are the key areas, and we're really looking to make some pretty significant investments in, you know, construction projects that would not have had those kinds of technologies previously, and they'll have them going forwards. The program that I lead really is at the absolute center of another $1 billion of investment, or nearly $1 billion of investment over 4 years. So that's a pretty hefty chunk of money that's targeted at emerging building technologies. So exactly the sorts of things we're talking about here. You know, again, we see this as really, really shaping and driving, you know, hopefully accelerating the full-scale commercialization of some of these exciting technologies that we see are going to be critical to the facility of the future, whether that's these, like you were teeing up at the beginning, these carbon dioxide, they're using carbon dioxide as essentially the refrigerant in a heat pump, which we think is, again, a game changer. We think that there's some, there's really some next generation cooling equipment that we want to do. There's really certainly this whole notion of the grid interactive building. For folks who haven't seen this, the CEC, California Energy Commission, is all in on time of use rates going forwards. It's going to be an enormous shift in how buildings need to be interacting with the grid. There's a set of technologies that are here today that can do that. They have less than 1% market penetration. So again, we see that as a pretty big opportunity. And then there's a final bucket of about 250 million that's funding studies and balance of system procurement. So all of that is to say it's going to be a wild ride for us. This is a big step change in terms of the investment that we're looking at over the next 4 years. And I do want to say something about Inflation Reduction Act, because it is an odd name. And some people might say, well, what does this have to do with inflation? But if you think about it and you look at the sort of the challenge that energy costs and actually the climate crisis and all of the impact that has, these are really very inflationary things. So to the degree that we can scale back on that kind of energy use and consumption, and we can actually drive back and down all the carbon pollution that's actually fueling all of this, literally fueling all of this climate crisis, I think that's very anti-inflationary.
Yeah. That's an awesome point. That would have been a cool way for me to phrase that question. And two, you spoke about the step change in investment, and it'll be interesting to see, what is the so-called green premium on decarbonized steel and concrete. I've read that it's very low, actually, but everyone has to move together, right? You got this first mover challenge, which hopefully, this is that first move. I want to give Jennifer a chance to quickly respond. I know my colleague is prompting us to wrap up. We could go all afternoon. But Jennifer, how's the IRA impacting the water cooler conversations at football?
Yeah, there was certainly a lot of excitement within FIFO when the IRA got announced. It's the nation's largest climate bill ever, and it really puts the U.S. and positions the U.S. on a path to be a global leader in the fight against climate change. I think obviously, without going through what Kevin has already shared, for real estate specifically, we're super excited about the incentives around clean building materials, around home energy upgrades, around electric vehicles. There's subsidies that make green hydrogen a possibility very near term. So I think this just further strengthens and validates our driving thesis within FIFO for the tremendous value of decarbonizing the built world. So I'll leave it right there.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to make a pitch for LA, for people to focus on developing projects here. We've got some of the best incentives in the country, if not the best, because of the fact that our municipally owned utility has more flexibility, right? They can pay for performance from existing. They don't have that rule that they can only pay for performance beyond code, which in California is pretty tough. So in that sense, you're getting a really great bang for your buck. And on the hydrogen side, SoCal Gas is making huge efforts in that direction, and DWP is the #1 off-taker in the country for green hydrogen already. So a little pitch for everybody to focus on LA and check out the directory. We're really excited about the collaboration with you all, focusing again on our little obsessive piece of existing buildings, energy and water, and we're here to support. So I like to end with quotes. This one I really love. I'm a big sci-fi nerd. So William Gibson invented the term cyberspace like in the 70s.
Wow.
And he said, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. And, science fiction becomes science fact, right? We've seen it in our lifetimes. And I want to thank you guys. You guys are really helping to drive this change. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I appreciate all the questions that we got. We'll work to get back to you via email if we weren't able to cover them today. Please do check out the directory and get in touch with us. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.